All right, our first plant for this week's segment is Mexican feathergrass, Nacella tenuissima. In some older references, it's referred to as Stipa tenuissima, so you might see that name as well. This is basically a warm season ornamental grass. It never really goes dormant. Very, very fine textured, and when the blooms emerge, and I've got some pictures here. They're very wispy, very much like the muhly grass, but probably even finer because these are on a smaller scale than muhly grass. But there's a few little blooms right there, kind of in a little wad. You can see that there's some green in here. They even during the winter they maintain some green all the time for the most part. They don't need to be cut back like a lot of people think ornamental grasses do. This is just kind of where I've collected all of mine. I've had them in a few different places over the summer, and I've kind of gathered them up in this one spot just to kind of overwinter them. You can see I had this in this really odd, very tall and narrow pot with bird poop on it all summer long, and you can see how fibrous and how deep the roots are, like most tall grasses. It is not terribly picky about soil. Although, like most grasses, it does not really like soggy, wet, heavy clay soil. So a little bit of drainage goes a long way. A little bit dry between waterings is good. The one downside to Nacella or Mexican feathergrass is that it tends to freely seed itself wherever the seeds land. I did donate a clump of this to the college that's at the edge of the rain garden, and if you look around the ground around it, kind of around to the sides, you'll see a lot of little young plants that have gotten started quite on their own from the parent plant seeding itself. In some places, for instance in California, it is considered a bad weed, and there's a movement to try to get local nurseries and garden centers to not carry it, for growers to not grow it, because it is so vigorous. Some references say that it's invasive, some say that it's weedy, and that's kind of a debate that we can have about what defines weedy and what defines invasive. And this is not really the place for that, nor the time, because my knee's giving out. So let's stand back up for a second. But Nacella tenuissima Mexican feathergrass, great texture. I love to use it in large containers because you can kind of, the wind will kind of move it around, and I've got quite a few royal blue, glazed containers that I've kind of put in a big group, and these are really pretty. I use them as the thriller for the thriller filler spiller type pots. I've used them in mass, and just kind of move them around. I'm of the belief that plants have wheels. Move them around where you need them, as long as you can physically manage to dig them up, then move them around. It also gives you an opportunity to experiment and to play with what grows where, what kind of combinations look good. And I try stuff all the time. Sometimes they do well, sometimes it's a dud. So it's just a constant matter of experimentation. And there's 1,000 different variables with the weather and with the soil and with the particular plant you've got and how much time you can devote to it and that sort of thing. So this is kind of a bonus lecture there. So anyway, this is Nacella tenuissima Mexican feathergrass. This next plant is Boston fern, or Nephrolepis exaltata. This one happens to be Boston compacta, and it probably looks like the one that you find at the discount stores, Home Depots and Walmarts. Boston ferns like bright light, indirect light, good consistent moisture, and good fertility, and they'll grow like crazy. A lot of different varieties. This next one, for instance, is called Boston compacta. You can see how it differs a little bit from the Dakota that we saw in the beginning. This next one is called Dallas. Very compact, and it's a triploid, which means that it doesn't lose these little pinnae or leaflets very easily when it goes from the greenhouse to your house. Was made popular back in the 80s and has stayed very popular ever since. They don't always have a nice, easy to pronounce name like Dallas. Sometimes they have names like Fluffy Ruffles. Very, very delicate fine fern. It's bipinnately compound, and it can be really hard to grow. This one is another different one called Bluebell. Just, some other subtle differences that are kind of lost on me, frankly. And then there's, the species. This is a good old sword fern. This is the kind of thing that, if you're in Central or South Florida or Southern California or other tropical climates, this is going to grow like a weed and is just about as invasive as mint or bee balm or something like that. So I think I would keep it contained somehow. But this is Boston fern, Nephrolepis exaltata. This little beauty is Ophiopogon japonicus, or mondo grass. Sometimes it's called snakebeard. Great ground cover. Grows through rhizomes, spreads through rhizomes, and is evergreen. Pretty tough, likes deep shade, good rich soil. Sometimes if you're fortunate and very observant, you can spot the fruit, which is a tiny little blue berry that looks like a gumball on a gum machine. There are many different heights, I guess. Some are very short and neat. They could be used in a paving pattern like this, or in a garden. And this is a similar look without being in the pavement. But a lot of variety as far as heights go, but the same basic look for Ophiopogon japonicus mondograss. Up next is a culinary herb called oregano. It's you'd be familiar with it in pizza or Italian dishes or other savory dishes, but it's Oreganum vulgare. And I can't help but feel like I'm casting a spell on a Harry Potter movie when I say that, but it does have sort of an attractive flower, and the flowers can actually be used in cooking as well. It also doesn't make a bad little landscape plant in the right setting, but it likes full sun, well-drained soil, not a lot of fertility. But that's oregano, or Oreganum vulgare. And our last entry for this week is Pachysandra terminalis. It's also called Japanese spurge, or just Pachysandra. This is a really good ground cover for shady areas, very much like the situation where mondo grass or liriope will grow. It's a nice evergreen foliage. You can see the flower bud in the middle that emerges to this little white flower. But really the star of the show is the foliage, and it likes shady places, consistent moisture, and they'll make you happy. But that's Pachysandra terminalis, or Japanese Pachysandra.